Winning over the crowd is hard. Most people would rather push up a daisy than to take the stage and attempt to entertain an audience. It's the fear of not knowing the outcome, whether the material someone created and practiced ad nauseum will receive a standing ovation from the crowd, or the vaudeville hook when rotten fruit is thrown at them. Those who understand this pressure the most are entertainers. An actor must study the role to make their mask look convincing for the screen. An athlete must put a copious amount of hours training and practicing their skills so that the victory is not only secured, the audience can enjoy the sight of the player dominating the field. A comic who drafts new material and workshops jokes on a consistent basis shows the difference between one that is soaring above the clouds and the other who flew too close to the sun. For the average Joe and plain Jane, practice is not an afforded luxury. Not to say that entertainers aren't affected by the same pressures. The difference is an actor can do extra takes till the delivery is right. An athlete has future competitions to collect wins, and the comedian has the next club to practice and rework their material if they bomb. Once someone's will has been projected onto the world, reality will update to fit current conditions. Think about how in the court system, the one on trial's prospects of either freedom, prison time, or even the penalty is all predicated on the unanimous decision 12 jurors of their peers must cast after observing the case. If trying to win the crowd through entertainment is hard, try swaying the opinions of 11 jurors who are adamant on getting a guilty verdict for a trial. Originally a 54 play written by Reginald Rose that was later adapted for the silver screen in 57, directed by Sidney Lumet with many other future iterations, 12 Angry Men deals with the dilemma of having to work with unknown men to decide whether an 18-year-old male lives or fries for a murder he's accused of. In the beginning, 11 of the 12 jurors are certain the accused has committed the crime, and only one casts doubt. Throughout the film, the rhetorical battle between Juror 8 and the room, especially number 3, best encapsulates how to win the crowd over. Like what you're hearing so far? Give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell, and share it around while you're at it. The easiest way to win the hearts of the people is to compel them to feel something. Compel the audience to laugh out of their seats, compel them to cry their eyes out, compel them to brandish torches and pitchforks ready to storm the Bastille. If it resonates with the people watching the presentation, then it's easier for them to entertain the thoughts of the presenter. But despite how easy it sounds, the hardest part is how to do it. Everyone has their own definition of what is entertaining, and trying to consolidate any of them down to a cohesive definition for a shared experience is a daunting task, which is why companies have a strategy called focus testing to properly gauge opinions, gain feedback, and find a consistent pattern so that constructing a marketing campaign for a product becomes easier. Now keep in mind, all of this can be transferred to the debate sphere. Two interlocutors with opposing ideas on a topic sit down and discuss their perspectives are tasked with 3 things. Make sure their ideas are presented in the best light, gauge the audience's reaction to points made by both sides, and whoever's argument sounds the most convincing wins. But there's one more secret objective for the speakers. Convince the opponent the plausibility of the position presented just enough for them to consider doubt in theirs if possible. Consider the narrative of 12 Angry Men. 12 male jurors, after listening to the trial, must decide whether an 18-year-old young adult from the slums wins his freedom or becomes a corpse at the seat of the electric chair. All but one person votes guilty. Some reasons have a more solid foundation than others, but almost all the jurors are convinced the accused must face the music. However, how quickly those votes came in shows the bias of our jurors. Because is a reprehensible action, and how they believed it went down based on the evidence, on top of coming from an unsavory background, means the level of sympathy granted to the accused is nearly non-existent. To the jurors, not only does this socially undesirable individual have a rebellious streak, he also dares his flesh and blood. He needed to be gone yesterday. And the juror that wears that bias on their sleeve the most is juror number 3.
Brother, I've seen all kinds of dishonesty in my day, but this little display takes the cake.
Before learning how to win the crowd, it's important to understand how someone loses them first. Juror 3 runs off the philosophy of treating every conflict like a nail as if the only tool in his possession were a hammer. A hard-nosed individual who values submission to authority first and foremost is the strongest advocate for the accused to be declared guilty.
He stabbed his own father 4 inches into the chest. They proved it a dozen different ways in court. Would you like me to list them for you?
However, this is not out of respect for the judicial system, considering he believes the lawyers wasted their time discussing an open and shut case, rhetorically inquiring to juror number 2.
Did you ever hear so much talk about nothing?
That trait is fully highlighted by juror number 11, the immigrant watchmaker who reveres America's democratic and judicial traditions. Number 3 is more interested in carrying out swift justice with no added consideration. All that matters is the person pays in equal measure for the crime they committed. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I'm just as sentimental as the next fella. I know he's only 18, but He's still got to pay for what he did.
When put in those terms, Juror 3 sounds as though he has an extreme rigid worldview when it comes to discipline. Make no mistake, he does. When the jurors go around the room explaining why they each voted guilty, as the kid's juvenile record is mentioned, he criticizes the current youth generation's behavior to parental authority, contrasting it with his own strict upbringing, stating,
When I was a kid, I used to call my father Sir. That's right. Sir. You ever hear a kid call his father that anymore?
He hammers this point home as he describes his relationship with his son, implying he used similar strict parenting practices.
I said, I'm going to make a man out of you if I have to break you in two trying. Well, I made a man out of him.
For now, understand that he wants a unanimous guilty verdict. The rest will be revealed later. This desire plagues his efforts throughout the story. When trying to convince someone of a position, whether it's majority or minority held, it's best to present it as another option and not the only one available. For most of the jurors, they fail at this, considering how the foreman speaking for them makes the assumption that juror number 8 had something mixed up when making his decision and that they should help him fill in the gaps. The special thing about how number 3 helps in this venture is his lack of assistance. In fact, he's constantly insisting on the guilt of the accused, even to the point of verbally chastising those on his side.
They'll get a chance to talk, but be quiet a second, will you?
When the second round of voting comes around with the foreman reading a not guilty slip from the secret ballot, number 3 instantly targets number 5 for voting.
Guilty like the rest of us, then some golden-voiced preacher starts tearing your poor heart out about some underprivileged kid just couldn't help becoming a murderer, and you change your vote. If that isn't the most sickening. Why don't you drop a quarter in this collection box?
Actually, it was number 9, an observant and insightful old man that defects. Unfortunately, when it was time for number 3 to apologize for his outburst, the damage was done. And that's just one of the many examples of how his rigidity messes with his desired outcome. What also does number 3 no favors is conflating coming to the same conclusion with allyship. In the case of number 11, after he highlights a glaring flaw with the timeline of events.
You voted guilty. What side are you on?
I don't believe I have to be loyal to one side or the other. I'm simply asking questions.
Nor does appealing to the facts of the case and then completely contradicting that statement when it becomes inconvenient.
The kid is guilty. Why don't you listen to the facts?
One long, angry line later.
20 seconds.
He said 15.
He said 20 seconds. What are you trying to
He said
distort?
15.
How does he know how long 15 seconds is? You can't judge a thing like that.
He said 15 seconds. He was very positive about it.
He was an old man. Half the time he was confused. How could he be positive about anything?
What's even more disheartening for the position held is accidentally proving the opposition's point out of rage. When number 8 brings up the point about the kid saying, I'm gonna get to his father, he argues that it could be easily attributed to any other way we use the phrase or the word itself in regular conversation. Number 3 disagrees with this notion, ultimately arguing because it was said to the father and now the father is etched in tape, that should be enough to prove the kid's guilt. However, he blows his gasket later when 8 vilifies his motives, calling him a self-appointed public avenger.
Kill him, Alt! Kill him!
You don't really mean you'll kill me, do you?
That's what happens when one disregards a major talking point just to silence their opponent. An unnecessary concession had to be made. Either by his own devices or just the natural progression of the debate, he loses support. For every convincing argument made by the other side or blunder he commits to means one more guilty vote is taken away from him. Eventually, the juror he considered an ally, the analytical stockbroker number 4, had to change his mind because he developed a reasonable doubt about a particular testimony. When he tries to appeal to the other evidence, number 2 stops him mid-sentence exclaiming,
Well, you said we could throw out all the other evidence.
Now he's the one standing his ground against the crowd alone. All eyes are on him waiting for his next words. His general disposition got him to this point, but it goes a bit deeper than that. When number 3 talks about his son, he also mentions that they got into a scuffle. As a result, he ate a punch to the face and hasn't seen him since. But it wasn't just a punch. Number 3's progeny, who he feels he's done right by, has defied his wishes in fighting against him, the parent.
Kids, work your heart out.
Because of this hit to his ego, the trial at hand has become a symbolic revenge of sorts where he can discipline an insubordinate kid, especially when accused of his father.
The kid you just decided isn't guilty was seen ramming this into his father. Now what about this, Mr. Reasonable Doubt?
But the farce cannot continue. Once he throws his wallet to the table revealing the picture of him and his son, he realizes he's been arguing in bad faith the entire time and votes not guilty. Juror number 3 aptly displays what happens when the horse blinders stay on. Now let's examine how Juror 8 opts to keep them off.
Well, I think testimony that could put a boy into the electric chair should be that accurate.
Designing a building is the job of an architect. It has to be stylish yet stable, unique yet still follows a pattern with other properties in proximity, high quality yet cost effective. All of these elements combined makes for a strong design for a property. A debater is tasked to do the same thing, except their building materials are the premises and arguments for their stance they will present to the crowd instead of a pencil and paper. Since number 8 is an architect by occupation, he knows this, and with the lay of the land shifting to everyone else in the room ready to send a newly minted adult to the chair so quickly without any deliberation, his main objective is to keep an open mind and cast enough doubt on the trial for the other jurors to reconsider their decision. An uphill battle that needs a strong foundation. So before we get into how number 8 flips a jury, let's see what he's up against. An 18-year-old is charged with the murder of his father. He leaves the house at 8 after being hit, and between the time he left and when the crime was committed, he buys a knife and shows it off to his friends. The defense testifies he went to the movies at 11:30, an hour and a half after coming home, whereas the testimonies of the old man who hears the commotion on the floor below gets to his door to see the kid rush down the steps of the apartment complex, and a woman catching a glimpse of the action from her window before the lights went out at 12:10, with the coroner setting the TOD at midnight. The weapon used? A switchblade. 3 hours after the crime, or 3 hours and 40 minutes from the defense's testimony, the kid comes home to relive the damage he's done, or to find out his father's soul was taken to the other side, and then arrested. The initial vote was 11-1 in favor of guilty. Number 5 chooses not to answer. Numbers 1, 2, 4, 6, 9, 11, and 12 are convinced of the prosecution's case. Number 7 doesn't really care as long as he makes the ball game. Number 10 detests people from the slums, and everybody knows about number 3. If and when the room holds a superior majority for the undesired position, the best practice is not to heat up the room, considering the space is already out to begin with. So number 8 asks everyone for at least an hour of their time to properly deliberate the fate of the accused.
Let's take an hour. Ball game doesn't start till 8 o'clock.
Each and every person has a condition to meet for the decision to change, starting with his first flip, number 9. Just off the strength of number 8 going against the group as he builds a case for the kid having a rough upbringing and calls to question the ownership of the knife as he slams down his own copy he purchased the day before, piqued number 9's curiosity just enough to throw in his support. People generally respect those who stick to their beliefs, and since number 9, a person who pays close attention to how others carry themselves in dress and in character, sees number 8 convincingly argue in good faith, well, let's see how the dice falls with this one. While it's rewarding to shift people to the other position based on a strong resolve, the opposition will prime their supporters to switch sides with enough pressure. Take for example jurors number 5 and 6. Number 5, like the accused, comes from the slums, so naturally he takes exception to number 10's bigoted talking points.
Them, I'm telling you.
Listen, I've lived in a slum all my life.
Wait a minute.
Please, I've played in backyards that were filled with garbage. I mean, maybe you can still smell it on me.
If that wasn't enough, number 3 accuses him of switching his vote out of sympathy, which blows his top.
Why don't you drop a quarter in this collection box?
Oh, now just wait a minute. Listen, you can't talk to me like that. No, who do you think you are?
A careless bigot and a crusader with an axe to grind are allies most would rather stay away from, for it can put a damper on the amount of support one can exert, considering at some point they would have to be defended. So when number 8 begins questioning a piece of the old man's testimony, whether the kid would be so bold as to even exclaim, "I'm gonna kill you," and after another ignorant remark from number 10 compels number 5 to change his vote.
Right. He's a common ignorant slob. He don't even speak good English.
Mr. Foreman, I'd like to change my vote to not guilty.
For number 6, he respects his elders. Seeing numbers 3 and 10's attempts to dog number 9's insights about the old man on the stand rub number 6 the wrong way.
Well, I'd like to make it clear anyway, if you don't mind. Do we have to listen to this?
The man wants to talk.
Thank you.
Why should he lie? What's he got to gain?
Attention, maybe.
You keep coming in with these bright sayings. Why don't you send them into a paper? They pay $3 a piece.
What are you talking to him like that for? A guy talks like that to an old man really ought to get stepped on, you know? You ought to have more respect, mister. You say stuff like that to him again, I'm gonna lay you out.
Which is the reason why he changed his vote. Decorum matters as much as the debate. If the temperament of the opposition is more inviting than the aligned side, then expect those to shift because their opponents are more courteous. On top of gaining favor and individuals defecting to the other side, the actual arguments have to be compelling to make the flips even possible. After attentively listening to the discussion so far, number 11 highlights a few concerns in regards to the 3-hour gap between the crime being committed and the son returning to the apartment, and why he would leave the weapon behind in the first place.
I
just don't think that he would have gone back.
Changing sides in the process. Had number 8 not questioned the totality of the narrative overall, number 11 wouldn't have considered this contradiction in the testimony. Number 2, being as meek as he is, wouldn't have dreamed of speaking up against number 3, 7, and 10 if it weren't for watching number 8 pushing back on their points. Whether it's number 3's habit of strong-arming the conversation with his agenda, number 7's flippant attitude towards the trial, and number 10's general ignorance.
Got those cough drops.
They're all gone, my friend.
Plus it helps to shatter the 15-second theory. At this point of the story, the jurors split down the middle, 6-6. Actually, make that 7, because 7 wants this to be over with, so he decides to change his vote to not guilty because go Yankees. The ability to sway opinions is a very useful tool to win over potential allies. Those allies under a non-judgmental space can assist in developing new insights or strengthening the argument. Like how number 2 doubts how someone who is substantially shorter than their taller target could stab their chest at a downward angle, followed by number 5 showing the jurors the proper technique, since he has experience in knife fights or at the very least watching them, which convinces numbers 1 and 12 to switch their votes. Sometimes the opposition will defeat themselves with their own incompetence, whether it be number 3's constantly contradicting his points to try to save face, or number 10 going on a racist diatribe no one was trying to hear.
Listen, I have. Now sit down and don't open your mouth again.
And ultimately votes not guilty so he wouldn't be completely ostracized. However, there's one juror who gives number 8 a lot of trouble argumentatively. Number 4, the only one who can effectively present counter-arguments for his side and the only one with no apparent biases. A man cutting through the fluff. Just because the knife can be replicated doesn't mean the boy didn't commit the crime.
It's possible, but not very probable.
Although the boy has such a background worth pitying, it is not of our concern. In fact, because of where he's from, his predisposition is to commit crime.
He was born in a slum. Slums are breeding grounds for criminals. I know it, and so do you. It's no secret children from slum backgrounds are potential menaces to society.
It may be odd how the victim was stabbed, but nonetheless, he was still stabbed.
I don't think you can determine what type of wound the boy might or might not have made simply because he knew how to handle a knife.
Number 4 proves to be a tough nut to crack. The only way to stop a well-oiled machine is to convince it to take inventory on the sum of its parts. So the not guilty side deploys 2 tactics. 1, to prove that the boy's testimony about going to the movies is to some degree plausible despite not remembering much about it. Number 8 quizzes number 4's memory by asking him to recall what he's done for each day backwards. Number 4 doesn't miss a step until he has trouble remembering Monday's second feature at the movies, making him break a sweat. An action that is foreign to him.
Don't you ever sweat?
No, I don't.
If number 4 couldn't perfectly recall the movie 4 days ago with low to no pressure, then he has to concede that the kid under intense emotional stress would have a hard time rattling off details about the movie he watched, all things considered. And 2, when number 9 notices the indents made on number 4's nose by his glasses, he recalls the female witness having similar indents, implying that she also owns a pair of lenses, meaning that her testimony is put into question whether or not she had her glasses on when she witnessed the crime take place. Number 4 instantly latches onto this idea for the same reason he broke a sweat on the memory recall. He now understands the difficulties of having to wear those shoes in the vacuum that is the deliberation chamber, which casts enough doubt in his mind to switch his vote. Now the tables have turned. It is now 1-11 in favor of not guilty, with number 3 in the same position 8 sat in earlier. With his back against the wall, number 3 makes a last attempt to shame the other jurors back to his side, to no effect. Number 8 does not apply any pressure whatsoever. All he wants to hear are number 3's arguments. But since all the trial stones were turned, there are none left. The only thing to do now is to give number 3 the space to come to the conclusion on his own. And with a little push from a picture, he does. 12 Angry Men is a masterclass of winning over the opposition. When the odds are stacked against one man in a room ready to make a choice without a second thought, the task of introducing another perspective is a tall order to ask of anyone. However, if the opponents are unwavering in their position, but sloppily argue their points for the sake of their overall objective, then the battle becomes easier. In the case of Juror 3, for all his attempts at browbeating those on his side to stick to their vote, since it was all predicated on his personal vendetta against his son, he completely drops the ball in accomplishing his goal. Whereas because number 8 took the time, possessed the patience, and solidly presented his position while listening with an open mind, rewarded him with the jury's full support. When the show's over and the audience give their round of applause, never miss the curtain call. But hey, what do I know?